What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Coach Steve Show podcast. Before we dive in today's episode, please make sure to hit the like button and the subscribe button on the Coach Steve Show YouTube channel and follow the podcast wherever you listen to your podcast. It can be found literally anywhere. Please follow it, rate it. I know on Spotify they just came out with a new rate edition, I guess you would call it, on there. We can go give it a star review, kind of like what they could do on Apple. So please, if you could follow it, rate it, review it, be a friend, tell a friend, like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. It would help out the algorithm, get some more eyes and ears on the podcast. I appreciate it so much. Thank you all for whoever does that. Podcast is brought to you by the Belly Up Sports Podcast Network. If you go to bellyupsports.com, check out all the other stuff they have there. Different blogs, articles, podcasts, shows, everything like that. Anything for anybody is on there. So thank you, Belly Up Sports, for allowing the podcast to be on there. We're going to dive right in. This is a continuation of Spider-Man No Way Home. Sorry, Logan, if you end up listening to this, I have to talk about it. Me and Logan do our Geek Corner. Trolled around with the idea of making that its own type of podcast. I've not really reached out to Logan, everything like that. But we have our Geek Corner segment. And this is just a variation of the Geek Corner segment. Me and Logan have discussed of doing it after Christmas. Christmas is just a couple of days away. So I apologize to Logan and anybody that is fans of Geek Corner, the small amount of listeners. But I have to get this off my chest. It's a great movie. I need to talk about it. This is a warm up to Geek Corner. Helps me get ready for Logan. Logan is my entertainment expert. But spoiler warning, it's been a week. So I figured this has been enough time to get people out there to see the movie. I did a spoiler-free one, and it was really tough to do without giving anything away. So I figured, weeks gone by, they should have been able to go see it. So warning, spoiler for Spider-Man No Way Home. If you have not seen the movie, do not listen to this. See the movie, then come back and listen. Or maybe if you haven't seen the movie and you want to listen to this first, great. But just let you know, spoiler warning for Spider-Man No Way Home. All right. Are they gone? Is everybody gone? Okay, good. This movie was amazing. It was probably top 5 best Marvel movie of all time. I'm going to come out with short segments of the podcast. I think me and Logan talked about it, but I want to kind of give my own reviews of the movies. Like maybe, do 3 to 5, say like, this is my bottom one and move all the way up to the best. This has to, leading up to the next one. The next movie I think is Doctor Strange. It's top 5 best Marvel movie of all time, and it's probably the best Spider-Man movie of all time. And I know there's some Tobey Maguire people out there saying, "Oh my God, you can't say that." And I said this in the spoiler-free one. If it's not the best Spider-Man of all time, it's going to have to be number 2. It's up there. The only thing that's not fair about this is there's so many villains. You have Doctor Strange. You have this tie into the rest of the MCU. So is that not fair that the Tobey Maguire ones? I don't know. But again, I had to go into this movie saying this is a Spider-Man movie. I'm a huge Doctor Strange person. I'm a huge Benedict Cumberbatch person. So going in, I knew Doctor Strange was in it. I wore a Doctor Strange shirt. But I knew this was a Spider-Man movie. This is a Tom Holland movie. These guys are just around to help the movie out a little bit. But it's top 5 best Marvel movie of all time. It might even be top 3, depending on who you are. I know Logan has Black Panther up there really high and Guardians of the Galaxy and all that. I have Infinity War as the best one. I have Endgame probably. I think it was top 2 or 3 there. This is up there with them as of right now. We'll get to another movie coming out at some point. But top 3 to 5 best Marvel movie of all time. Probably the best Spider-Man movie of all time. Right now, I'm going to go through each part of the movie. I could talk about each thing as a big whole, but then I'll keep circling back to it. So I kind of want to go down literally how the movie went. If I skipped something, I apologize. I went through and typed up everything. I have notes, and I could talk about everything as a whole. Like, okay, we're just going to talk about Tom Holland as Spider-Man, but it would come back around. So since it's going to come back around anyway, I'm just going to go down how the movie goes and give my thoughts and feelings at the time. What I like about the movie at the beginning is it literally picks up right where Far From Home ended. We ended Far From Home. I think it was either at the very end or a credit scene. Video comes out of Mysterio saying, he had put those pieces together. He was messing around and said, the Spider-Man, it showed like Spider-Man was killing him or was about to kill him. And then says, I'm revealing, Spider-Man is Peter Parker. Peter Parker comes on. And so then the world kind of knows, and it kind of ends with him going, what the F? And that's kind of how it ends. Then COVID happened. So we really didn't get a lot of, other things. Took us a long time to get to this movie. Excuse me, I'm just making sure I get this one name right. And then it ends with the movie of Far From Home. Then it shows Jonah Jameson, showing him. And now he's from the original Spider-Man. He's from the Tobey Maguire world, and we already kind of knew going in, especially when we've got Loki and all that stuff of the multiverse. So when you saw that, it's like, did the multiverse already open? Is this happening? And the timelines, we have no idea, and we'll get to that later, but it shows him saying, this is Spider-Man. And that's kind of how, and it starts off right where that picked up. So it shows MJ and this crowd, they're like, are you Spider-Man's girlfriend? Spider-Man's girlfriend? And they're like touching her. He comes down and the woman like shoves Spider-Man, like trying to get his, Tom Holland and Peter Parker trying to get his mask off. And he doesn't push her, just kind of puts his hand up. She goes, he pushed me. And how crazy that Spider-Man in this movie relates to real world stuff. Like that is like your Karen. That's like the real world thing of like, make it, you know what I mean? And I won't go too much into that, but starts off where we left off. He's swinging through. He gets on the phone with Ned. He's like, dude. And I am on record saying that these Spider-Man movies, the Homecoming and Far From Home, are not my top Marvel movies. I don't even know if they were my top Spider-Man movies. After re-looking at them right before this No Way Home, I think Homecoming, I'm gonna have to rank it a little higher. I like it more. But what I like about it is Ned, Peter, and MJ, these actors and actress, how they work together. Like that to me just worked like, dude, just great acting, great stuff. Then he's swinging through the city to get home, and there's Happy and Aunt May. He comes in, they're breaking up, they walk in saying, oh, just practice safe sex. Like it didn't bother them. Like, I didn't see anything. And he's trying to ignore the fact that there's helicopters outside. They're following him. People know he's Peter Parker. And then things start to crumble around him, because what's different about people knowing who Spider-Man is compared to like Iron Man and Captain America is they're adults. So like when Tony Stark said, I am Iron Man, one, he wanted them to know when he came to that moment. Two, he's rich. He's able to do a lot of things. Three, he's an adult, so he can handle it. We got to remember, I know Tom Holland is, an adult, but he's playing a high schooler. And this is for a high school kid. But then on top of it, to show this, we all know Peter Parker did not kill Mysterio, or want like to execute him or anything, or to not order this hit. The hit of like to eliminate was talking about the robots and Stark with the glasses. If you've seen, No Way Home or Far From Home, sorry. So it looks a little, that's where it hurts, and then people are like, oh my God. And then because at the time when Tony Stark said, I'm Iron Man, in the 1940s, when they knew, okay, Steve Rogers is Captain America, Thor was Thor, it didn't matter. The difference is like, they were not the ones that, they saved the world, but it was before that. Spider-Man has fought with that against Thanos. Spider-Man was fighting with Tony Stark and Steve Rogers in Civil War. So they know, so it's escalated. But then you got the police involved and saying, because of maybe killing Mysterio. Mysterio had, had the presence of being a hero, which we all know was fake. It was all a fake world, a digitalized world. And so I really like how it picked up. It started off hot, and some people don't like when movies start off like boom, 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 like Infinity War started that way, started right with Thanos. Endgame started a little slow, to build up to that, which I think people like the intro to that. And you thought you'd get something like that here. Nope, they came in hot and heavy, and it was boom, boom, boom. Loved it. So then you kind of see the legal stuff. They bring MJ and Ned and Peter and his family in for questioning. One of the best ones is Ned, like when he walks in and says, so what did you think when MJ told you that Peter was Spider-Man? And whoa, I knew he was Spider-Man. Like that type of interaction. I love him. I love Ned. At first when I first originally watched these Spider-Man, not a fan, love him now. So you knew there was legal troubles, and there were some leaks online to this movie about Matt Murdock, plays in Daredevil, being in here. He was from the Daredevil show on Netflix in the Marvel world. And that was one of the big questions was, are these shows going to start making their way into the Marvel world or the MCU? Excuse me, are they going to make it into the MCU? Are they in the same timeline? Is it like a different universe or whatever? So I recommend, like me, I had seen, some of Daredevil, never watched, like sat down and watched the entire thing, but you've seen pieces of it from all these shows. I'm going to go back and rewatch the shows. I recommend it because this, they're at home. He's at Peter's home. You can hear somebody on the phone, sits down, and it's Matt Murdock. He sits there and the only time I've ever been part of a theater where the theater erupts was Endgame. I didn't see Infinity War in the theaters, but in Endgame, when he said on your left and everybody showed up, he said Avengers Assemble, theater erupted. The theater did not erupt like that, but they were like, oh my God. And they clapped and cheered. It was Matt Murdock. It was leaked online that he'd be on there, but I have to be careful what I see because I've seen leaks before for movies. I've seen different things like a trailer or like a video from something, and it's never been in the movie. So take that with a grain, so it didn't ruin it for me. It was more like when I saw okay, it was true, but it wasn't like, oh, I already know this is happening. But he was on there as a lawyer, and he says he clears up all the legal stuff for Peter, but then warns Peter and warns Happy, saying okay, they're looking into Stark Industries because of the machines that were used around Mysterio. There's some things missing, and so you are going to need a really good lawyer because they're going to come after you because you were one of Tony's best friends, the bodyguard, and so they're going to come after you. And then looks at Peter and says, yeah, the legal troubles are over, but the public perception is something that I can't change. It's something you're going to have to deal with. And then the brick comes through and he catches it, and everybody is like, Aunt May and Happy are like, how did he catch that? And Peter is kind of like, something's up with this guy. And that's where he's like, how did you catch that? He goes, I'm a really good lawyer. And so now we have Matt Murdock in the MCU. So it's either we're going to see him in future things. We're going to see him maybe, I don't know if he'll get his own movie. Is he going to be, an Avenger? Is he going to be a Dark Avenger? They're going to bring the Defenders back in. That's why I recommend everybody to go back and revisit the Netflix shows like I am. I'm going to go back and revisit, try to watch each one from start to finish. I've seen Daredevil stuff, so I knew who Matt Murdock was. I'm rewatching Daredevil first just because of this, and I'll go back and watch the rest of them. So I recommend that. So he's in the MCU. It's yet to be seen or heard if he's going to be in a show, a movie. Is he just going to be, not a cameo, I guess, but is he going to be just a part of it, like a Civil War movie or like in this movie with Doctor Strange? The sad thing is we never see him again the rest of the movie. Some people thought we should see more. That's the last we've seen of him. But it shows that he'll probably be in the MCU, or at least clarifies in the Daredevil show, spoilers, where they make references like the very beginning, because of rewatching it, some of the bad guys, the mob saying like, oh, if you guys got beat up with a guy in a mask, oh, if he had a metal suit or a swinging hammer or something, so they're referencing Iron Man and Thor. So it kind of they always hint that these are in the same world, but it's never been proven. So this has brought him into the MCU. It was great. The theater erupted. It is hard to tell how much time has passed during this whole movie, I will say, because we start off with, there's a little bit later scene where you could tell it's been Halloween. So we don't know how much time has passed. We know that Far From Home, I think it was about 7 or 8 months after Endgame or after the blip, when everybody was brought back. And so we think it's around the same timeline as Hawkeye, and we'll get to that later. I know Hawkeye, I think, is about 5 months after No Way Home, like from the beginning of the movie, not the end. And we'll get to that. So it's hard to tell. I just want everybody to know when you're watching this movie, it is hard to tell, like as months go by. Is it a couple weeks? I assume it's a couple weeks because of legal troubles. That's probably how much it takes. It's already right from the start. It's fun right from the start to finish. With the joke, serious situation, it's just a real fun movie. Then, Peter they have that public perception, especially when the brick comes through. So he and Aunt May have to, leave home and they go live in the, spiritual oasis with Happy. And you get the nice scene with Peter and MJ talking on the phone. Their dynamic as, actor and actress are great. They're dating in real life. So that connection, the improvisation there works really well. Then they have to go back to school, and it's split. You have half of them showing that Peter's the devil. How did we believe Mysterio was the thing? We believe Mysterio. Then he goes into the school and the principal and everything has the shrine set up. The PE teacher's like, we know what you did. I would believe Mysterio. And so now Peter has to deal with high school. Now you're Spider-Man, you got phones on you. No matter what you do, it's going to be filmed. Again, this is leaning towards what's happening in real life. In real life, there's more cameras, there's more smartphones, they're filming people. It's real. Like this is stuff that actually happens. So it's crazy how No Way Home really brought that together. And then they have the scene on the roof and Ned and Peter and MJ are talking about like, okay, we got to go to school together. They want to go to MIT. They're going to apply to the same backup schools. And then we have the montage. It was great to see Dummy. I believe that's what they call him, the machine from Iron Man 1 with the, machine that really wouldn't listen to Tony or operate right. He's living with Happy, which was great. And then Peter, when he's trying to clean out his Spider-Man uniform or his uniform, his costume, you see this box from Stark Industries, which kind of shows like, okay, Happy did take something from Stark Industries because Tony probably wanted that to not fall into the wrong hands, whatever it is. So you go through the montage of Peter getting mail from colleges and not getting into them. And then you get this scene that MJ, Ned and Peter, they get the MIT letter. They go to where MJ works open at the same time. And now we're starting to see what Matt Murdock was talking about. Public perception is going to hurt them. And they don't get at MIT. Ned reads and says, due to what, paraphrasing here, due to the recent events, they cannot, look at their application at this time or consider it. And so MJ and Ned are suffering because of just knowing Peter, just knowing that he's Spider-Man, because regardless if the legal trouble is over, regardless in court, they say he didn't kill Mysterio. Some people may believe it. Some people just don't want to be associated with it. So Ned and MJ are now suffering. But what's great in this movie is they say they wouldn't change a thing. So they believe in Peter. They believe that he is a hero. They love being friends with him. They love the relationship. So they believe him. But Peter, being Peter, always wants to help people, always wants to, put others before himself. And then I think is it Flash Gordon comes in, dances with the MIT thing. Kind of funny. I didn't like that character in the other movies, but this one seemed pretty funny. I think they brought it back to where they could relate to the audience. So yeah, they don't get an MIT, you're starting to feel the pain. And Peter, this is where you saw in the trailer, Peter looks up and you could tell this is why it's hard to tell how much time has passed. I recommend trying to watch No Way Home or Far From Home. I keep saying the wrong thing, Far From Home, to figure out like when did that trip take place. Since it immediately picks up right after how much time passed in Far From Home to now. He looks at the decorations. There's Halloween decorations. MJ's been asked to take them down. So you're guessing, you don't know how long the legal troubles took. You're guessing maybe a month, a couple weeks. So is it October into November? Did this stuff happen in the summer and months because school started? Who knows? But they have the decorations up and Peter looks up and he sees like not a witch or something. I don't know, just, whatever it is. And this is where in the trailer he gets the idea of let's go visit Doctor Strange. So Peter walks to the Sacrum Sanctorum. So it doesn't take long to see Doctor Strange. I have no idea about how long it took. Because again, I said in the spoiler-free one, this is a movie where you're not going to look at your watch and say, oh my God, how much time has passed. If you look at your watch or you look at your phone to see what time it is, you're gonna be like, oh my God, it's only been 20 minutes. It's only been a half hour. Like, oh God, I still got an hour and a half. Because this is a 2 hour and 28-minute movie. Like when you wake up before your alarm, if it's like 5 minutes before your alarm, you're pissed. If you wake up and you go, oh my God, I have an hour. This is fantastic. That's what it was. So I can't tell you how long it took, but it didn't seem that long till we got to go see Doctor Strange. Now, again, I'm a Doctor Strange person. He is going to play a big role. And going into this movie, swirling theories. Is this really Doctor Strange? Is this Mephisto? Is it whatever? So you got to watch the movie, be the judge, but it's on our seats to see Doctor Strange because we got the premise of the movie. In the trailer, it shows like Doctor Strange makes a spell. Something goes wrong. The villains come out. It's the multiverse. Then we get a trailer where you hear Doctor Strange say the spell you botched. So did Peter mess it up? But then like it shows maybe Doctor Strange messed it up. Who knows? Well, I know, but at the time you're like, who knows? But it doesn't take long to see Doctor Strange. So Peter, goes to Sanctum Sanctorum. We already knew that. There be snow, and then it shows Wong, and he goes like, "You're the most famous person in the world. We get it." Then Doctor Strange shows up, and then we find out Doctor Strange is not the Sorcerer Supreme anymore. And Doctor Strange says that because Wong got it, and he says he got on a technicality because Strange was gone for 5 years. And so this is something to pay attention to when you hear this. Is it going to bother Doctor Strange and everything else? And so in the trailer, it kind of gives us the impression that Peter immediately goes to Doctor Strange and says, "Can you make it to where nobody knows that I'm Spider-Man?" Well, that's not the case. We find out Peter comes up to Doctor Strange, who they have a nice interaction. I think Benedict Cumberbatch and Tom Holland worked well together in this movie. I think they fed off each other pretty well. I think they could, they just worked together. I would love to see more screen time with them, but I know this is a Spider-Man movie, not a Doctor Strange movie. It had the same type of vibe as Homecoming with Tony Stark, and Peter Parker. But the first thing he does is ask Strange, "Can you go back in time to make sure and maybe change, Mysterio, that to change him, he didn't, to not tell anybody that he's Spider-Man?" And one of the questions after Endgame, and we never really got this answer in WandaVision, Loki, Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Thanos destroyed the Time Stones, or the Infinity Stones in Endgame. He snapped them and they're gone. So one of the questions was, are they still in the MCU? Are they still in our current timeline? Now, Loki showed them in the TVA where the TVA was like, yeah, these are paperweights. So they didn't matter. So Strange tells him, like, Peter, he goes, I'm paraphrasing, we mess with the flow of time, and now you want us to go back and do it again just because your life got messy. And and then it shows more of how Peter Parker is saying, it's not my life I'm worried about, it's other people's. Aunt May's getting affected, Happy's getting affected, Ned and MJ are getting affected, so it's not about him. And Doctor Strange, he's hard. He goes, but I don't have the time stone anymore. So this answers the question that the time stones or the Infinity Stones are gone in our current timeline. So from when the first movie came out with Iron Man, and you go in that order, they're gone. And so that kind of answers that question, when Peter is, kind of, he's disappointed and thinks he wasted his time. And so this, to me right now, tells me this is Doctor Strange. It's not another character, because you could tell in the face, he does feel bad. So again, Marvel changed what happened in the trailer, because in the trailer, it kind of gives the impression that Peter was asking this question and he didn't. Wong comes along and says, like, people forgetting, and says something to Doctor Strange. And Doctor Strange says, Wong, we could go. He talked about the spell that could make people forget. And then so it was kind of Doctor Strange that came up with saying we could make people forget that Peter Parker is Spider-Man. And Wong says, you can't cast that spell that, goes into, dealing with world, dealing with time. And then Strange comes out and says, we've used it for much less. He goes, you remember that, party at Cosmata? I said the name wrong. And he goes, no. And he goes, exactly. So, he's proven that this is a safe spell, that they've used it before. And it's strange because it's weird, because Doctor Strange has to look at Wong and say, kind of get permission, because he's the Sorcerer Supreme now, and Strange isn't, which is strange. And so then Wong goes, just leave me out of it. And, walks through a portal because he's doing Sorcerer Supreme stuff. This could be him leaving to go do the scene that we see in Shang-Chi. This could be him going off and doing something that we might see in Doctor Strange 2. Who knows? But he goes off. And so Strange looks at him and smiles. Marvel does a great job of making the trailer one way and what happens in a movie another. Like in Infinity War, for example, it shows the Hulk running with everybody. But then we know we don't see the Hulk after he gets beat up by Thanos. So in the trailer, it made it look like Peter asked him to forget that he's Spider-Man. But then it shows, Strange saying something and Wong saying, "Don't cast that spell." And, Doctor Strange goes, "Fine, I won't." Hops in and he winks at him and then goes and does it, which gave us the impression that why is Strange acting recklessly? Is this Doctor Strange? Is this Mephisto? Does Wanda have something to do with it? Because Wanda apparently was a tee off to Doctor Strange 2, which we'll get to in another podcast episode. So it shows that this is going to be a safe spell or everything. So the spell, Strange is starting to do the spell, and says like, we're going to make that people forget Peter Parker Spider-Man. And then he's, it's really cool. They're down there and he goes, and they shot an episode of, I can't remember what he said, they shot of, an episode down here in the 80s. It's a really cool place. And these were the leaked videos that we saw. We kind of knew when we saw Peter in this place with like old brick walls that this has something to do with Strange. And he gets the spell right. And he goes, "Nice knowing you, Spider-Man." And he starts doing it. And Peter goes, "Well, what do you mean?" And he goes, "I'm going to make everybody in the world is going to have to forget Peter Parker Spider-Man." And he goes, "Including myself." And while he's making, you see like the line go around him. He's doing the spell. And Peter goes, "Can't some people still know?" And Strange goes, "That's not how it works." And so Peter pleads a case of some people need to know, like, can MJ know? And it was, this is where they worked well together. Benedict Cumberbatch, Tom Holland. "Can my girlfriend still know?" And he goes, "Well, it depends. Is she your girlfriend just because you're Spider-Man?" And so then he creates and says, "Okay, everybody except, that and MJ." And then, "What about Aunt May? It was crazy at the time I told Aunt May." And so he creates and says, "Okay." Then he goes, "Ned." He goes, "What's a Ned?" And so he makes to where Ned knows. And then he goes, "What about Happy?" And, "What about other people?" And then as this is going on, Strange is like, "I'm annoyed." And then it starts shaking. Everything starts going on because Strange is starting to cast it and Peter's talking and it's changing and the spell becomes too big. And then we get to see what happens with the spell, why it gets messed up, because Strange is trying to accommodate for Peter. Peter is talking too much. It's changing it. So it is Strange's fault, but Peter's fault. And then we get a glimpse of the multiverse because when it breaks open, you see this purple and you see these figures. And we saw similar things in Loki when Loki and them finally got to him and Sylvie where they go and you see the timeline and the color of it. You could tell this is the multiverse, which we got to see in Loki. So it breaks open. Strange then is able to contain the spell. And so this is where, to me, I'm laughing. He goes, "You change my spell. You don't change my spell." He goes, "You change," and then he goes, "You change my spell 6 times." And then Peter goes 5 times. He goes, "You change my spell. You don't change my spell." And one thing you've noticed in a lot of the movies with Peter Parker is they do kind of treat him like a kid, because Strange makes a comment, "After everything we've been through together, I keep forgetting that you're just a kid." And I think sometimes they use, like Iron Man tried to do that in Homecoming. They kind of treat him like that in Civil War. They kind of not kind of in Far From Home, but not really. But then again, in Infinity War, like, you're a kid, go home, don't be here to help. And he had to say, "I can't be the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man if there's no neighborhood." And so they kind of do pull the kid card on him a lot. But I mean, he fought against Thanos. He's done a lot of things. Is he really a kid? So Strange is like, "I contain the spell. Look, Peter, I'm sorry you didn't get into college, but if you've talked to admissions and you plead your case to them and they still reject you, there's nothing that anybody could do." And that's when Peter goes, I could just call them." And that's where Strange gets mad. And you can tell when Strange is mad at somebody because right before the spell happened, he's, Peter comes in and calls him sir. And he goes, "Oh, please, we fought halfway around the universe together. We fought against Thanos. Please call me Steven." And he calls him Steven. Oh, that's weird. I'll allow it. That did make it into the movie. So they're down there and he goes, "Steven," he goes, "Call me sir." And that's when he calls people by their name. So that he could tell. And then if he calls you by your first name, like when you could tell when the interaction with him and Tony Stark in Infinity War, right before he gives the time stone, he kept calling him Stark. When he knew Tony was going to go die, and we get the famous line like, "We're in the end game now," and then at the end where he goes, "Tony, there was no other way." So like you could tell when he's tolerant with you. So with Peter, he was calling him Peter, and then now he's like Parker. So he calls him Parker. He's not too happy. So when Peter's like, "I could have called college admissions," and that's when Strange goes, "You didn't call them." He goes, "You didn't think to call them before you asked me to brainwash the entire world." And he goes, "Well, when you put it that way," and then slam. So we get our first glimpse of Doctor Strange, kind of what's been going on with him. One thing I am confused about, and we might get this in a different movie. Doctor Strange says there is no time stone anymore. There is no Infinity Stones, but he's still wearing the Eye of Agamotto, where it just held the stone, but he's still wearing it. I don't know if they're doing that just because he likes to wear it. Does it mean something? I know in the comics it does mean something. Maybe we'll get something later. That's just a thought I saw. On my notes here, I love their interaction with Spider-Man and Doctor Strange. In a way, I was kind of hoping that at this moment we see Doctor Strange kind of be of not a father figure, but kind of like an Iron Man figure to him that we saw in Homecoming and a little bit in Infinity War. So one of the things that I've heard about people that have seen the movie, I went and listened to different podcasts or try to read things. Because after you see the movie, you're allowed to go read that stuff. They think, and we get to a little bit later, is Strange acting weird, because of the trailer and the theories around it. I don't see him acting weird. But one thing I will say with Doctor Strange, and I'll probably say it again later on, everything that's come out with Marvel ever since Endgame is showing characters or showing the world and how they've handled Thanos, how they've handled the blip, how they've handled being gone for 5 years. So you have to, really look at it. The first one to come out, even though I know it's considered phase 3, was, Far From Home, how the world dealt with it, what's been happening a little bit. That was a little glimpse into it. WandaVision, perfect example. How did Wanda handle grief? What's been happening there? The characters around that they bring up, like it was said before, like you don't know what happened in those 5 years. Falcon and the Winter Soldier, especially when they talk about money, when they talk about people just come back and they go back to try to be normal what it was 5 years before. When you look at Loki, and that's a whole different aspect. So a lot of these stuff, besides like Shang-Chi, because we don't really know when that takes place. We don't know if that was before the blip. I think it was after. But it just showed a lot of the main characters that we've been around, like how they handle things. We don't know if Doctor Strange is acting weird in this movie, and you guys see that. We don't know how he's handling it. And we may not know it till we get his movie, exactly how he's handling it, because remember, he had to go see all those different, 4 million, 14 million, 600, 605. And he knew Tony was going to get killed, like the whole time, the whole fight in Endgame. He knew. Because remember, Tony asked him, he goes, "If I tell you what's going to happen, it's not going to happen." So how is he dealing with that? How is he dealing with all of this? How has his life changed? Because remember, he had a love in his first movie. So there's just things. So if he is acting weird, maybe he has a right to, because we don't know how he's dealing with everything. But then Peter, has to call Flash and say, "Okay, I'll swing you to class for a week if you help me talk to this lady that can help talk to admissions at MIT." So poor Peter has to have, I love the authenticity that Marvel can have, because Peter in every movie is not a rich kid. They live in New York, live in a small apartment with Aunt May or Uncle Ben or whoever, and whatever movie you're watching. And so he shows up on this bridge, still wearing the Spider-Man iron suit that he got. But with the technology being taken away, he doesn't have the face scanner. So he's trying to find this lady on the bridge in the car on her own. And he's wearing this wrinkled shirt, this wrinkled, suit thing. Now, when you get on this bridge from the trailer, we're all looking at the bridge. I know everybody in the theater was like, I remember hearing somebody in the theater going, "Oh, it's the bridge." because we know what's going to happen on the bridge. Some villain's going to pop up. So you're in the theater, you're waiting. Goes up to this lady, just knocks on the door and says, like, don't be dumb like MIT. MIT's dumb. And it just shows how Peter is in there. He says, I'm more concerned about Ned and MJ getting into school. So it just brings that all back that he cares more about other people than himself. And then his spider senses start tingling. This whole movie, the spider sense was amazing. You get glimpses of it at times, like hair sticks up, but his spider sense is just, out of this world. And then when that happens, everybody literally like sat up in their seat and was like waiting, because we know what villain is coming. And then all of a sudden you see the metal arm and tentacle come up, and then it's Dr. Otto Octavius shows up, and he goes, "Hey, Pete." He goes, "Hello, Peter." And everybody starts cheering. We get the villain from Spider-Man 2. It is fantastic. So we know that when something happened with that spell, the multiverse opened up into that world. And I love how Peter's like, "Hello." And then he goes, "What'd you do with my machine, the one that absorbs the sun?" And Peter's just like, "Well, we'll help you find it." And then you get this amazing fight scene with Octavius and this Peter. It was a great fight scene. Every fight scene in this movie was just on par. There was no bad one. There was not too much or took too long. Sometimes in Marvel, you have a fight scene go on for 5 or 10 minutes. This is not, it took just a couple minutes. He's swinging the big cement circle thing, swinging at Peter. Peter's able to save some people during the whole thing. But this Dr. Otto Octavius, when he made the comment of, "What'd you do with my machine?" So you're trying to figure out which part of the movie did he enter from in this multiverse. And so they're having this great fight scene. Peter's able to save the woman in the car, able to save a family. But then Octavius gets him. I mean, he really actually won this fight. He was ready to stab Peter. But when he does, he like rips off, and you see the nanotech go on to Octavius' arm. And this is the picture that we saw in the trailer and again, swirling theories. Did he get a hold of Iron Man's suit? Did he put it on? Well, it showed like this nanotech just got on there, and you're like, oh, did this make it powerful? Did he just absorb it? How could this old technology from way, way back when in a different universe absorb it? And then when he went to stab Peter, you could see it moved the machine down to block it on his chest. And all of a sudden it was like a Bluetooth connection, or it's like connected to new, and he was able to control Octavius, this new technology can control the old one. And it just goes, I'm going to keep bringing this back because I don't think people did it enough in these movies, or like people don't talk about it enough, is Peter is more worried about others. So he controls Octavius, wraps him up. He's able to control the arms because I call it the Bluetooth connection. It was like new device paired, just like a cell phone. He goes to the woman and says, ma'am, are you okay? Are you okay? I hope you're okay. We can still get you to your flight. And she goes, I'm going to talk to them about your friends and you. And he goes, no, it's not about me. Talk about them. Don't talk about me. It's not about me getting to school. It's about them. And she goes, I'm going to talk to them about those and you if you keep your nose clean. So Peter just trying to help people is fantastic. It keeps coming back to this a lot in the movie, but to a fault. And we'll get to that where maybe I get annoyed a little bit. And then Peter's trying, talking to Octavius, like, whoa, like, where are you from? Or not where are you from? He has no idea about the universe. He just goes like, what's going on? And then the next part of the theater erupts is you see a pumpkin bomb roll up, it explodes, and then you hear the laugh, and then you see Green Goblin from the first Spider-Man just come rolling in, and you hear the ha, like the evil laugh. He's there. And then you think you're about to get your second fight scene, and then you see them vanish right back to the Doctor Strange lair, is what I call it. And I'm glad that, because you just had this great fight scene with Dr. Octavius, and then to have a fight with Green Goblin and Osborn, I just wouldn't have been the right thing to do, but it was great. Like the theater, erupted when we saw that, because probably the greatest Spider-Man villain of all time, and William Dafoe, when he played it, and that Spider-Man movie was just knocked it out of the park. And then we start to learn, we're back to Doctor Strange. Uh, you know, Strange uh, brings him in, and he goes up to Peter, and he's got blood on his face. And then we get the line of "Be careful what you wish for, Parker." And then when he's calling him Parker, he's not happy with you. And then you see Octavius locked in this magical thing, like a kind of like a prison cell, but you got the wall, like a magic wall in front of him. And so then Peter's like, "What happened?" And Strange basically has to explain he goes, "When you botched my spell, it opened up like the multiverse, opened up universes, and people that know that Peter Parker is Spider-Man came into the universe because the spell got changed so much. And when it opened it up, people that know that Peter Parker Spider-Man came in, and that's why you saw Octavius and we saw Green Goblin. Then you see the lizard jump out, and Strange said he had felt a presence. He went and fought the lizard, able to capture him. And so people that know that Peter Parker Spider-Man are coming into the universe. And so that's when Peter Parker goes, the multiverse is real. And Strange gets a line of, like the multiverse is something that we know frighteningly little about. And we've, messed with time and space and, the universe with the spell. And that's when Peter goes, I saw another one. It was like a flying green elf. And he goes, well, he sounds jolly. And Peter or Doctor Strange is like, I've got to figure out how to get the spell so we can get them back to their own universe. And so Strange gives Peter, this thing where he could shoot at people and get them right back, into the thing. So that way he doesn't have to fight anybody. He could just immediately do that, get them back to the Doctor Strange lair is what I call it. Get him in there. The one thing I wish, at this point of the movie, when you listen to people, they say, is Doctor Strange acting weird? Is it jealousy for not being the Sorcerer Supreme? This is something to keep in mind as you're watching them. If you're listening to this before the movie, I've seen it twice. So if you've seen it once, maybe this is something you're thinking about at the time, or maybe go back and think about. Is it still, because again, I'll get to this later. So one thing I wish we saw was, why didn't we get the fight scene with Doctor Strange and the lizard? I think that would have been fun. I fought him. He's holding his ribs and stuff like that. Like it was a tough fight. I wish we would have saw it. And that's when Peter goes, all right, I'll help you. This is my fault and I'll fix it, but I'm going to need some help. And that's where we get Ned walking. I can't believe I'm in the Sanctorum. And Strange, like, neither can I. And Ned goes, our family says we got magic and everything else, and I've always thought that. And this is where, again, the trailer had changed. In the trailer, we get where, Doctor Strange says, scour the internet and Scooby-Doo this crap. And that's when MJ was like, this is partly your mess. And I could think of a couple of words that start with the word please. And he goes, please, Scooby-Doo this crap. Well, that completely changed. Strange is walking up the stairs. Ned and MJ are talking to Peter and goes, okay, what happened? And Strange goes, he messed up a spell trying to get you guys into college. Because Peter already told them like they're going to talk about MIT. So they're all excited and talk about the spell. And that's when, Strange was like, no, the big thing is you guys have found 0 otherworldly beings here and we're wasting time and everything else. And he goes, so get out there, scour the internet and Scooby-Doo this shit. So it just completely changed from the trailer, except for when MJ, I could think of a couple words starting with the word please. Then it goes to Strange and he goes, please Scooby-Doo this shit. And so he takes off so that way he can figure out how to get the spell to work to send them back to their universe. This is where Peter figures out. So in the trailer, we get this like black suited Spider-Man, and we think it's like a magic suit from Doctor Strange. No, he had like this goo on the front. So he figured out like, if I take the cover off or turn it inside out, it's this, so he can wear it. And they find out there's a presence out there. So he's going to go find it. They think it's, they say it's the flying, Goblin, or we know it is Green Goblin. He's calling it Flying Elf. But we're slowly piecing together where they've left in their universes, because Osborn says, I had Spider-Man, by the throat, and then he was just there. So we know it was near the end of Spider-Man 2. So we're figuring out where that came from in the movie. And then on the bridge, Octavius had said, Osborn, because he knew, because remember, he comes after Green Goblin, so he knew who he was. Everybody figured out who he was. And so he tells Peter, like, he can't be alive. He's dead. So either that's not Osborn or you're out there chasing ghosts. So it's everything's starting to piece together at this point. At this point, you're probably halfway through the movie. Going out there, and we think it's going to be Green Goblin because they said there was somebody flying around. So when Peter's out there, all of a sudden you see electricity, and we get Electro from the Amazing Spider-Man 2. And, it's real funny. Peter shoots the thing and goes right, the magical beam to send him back to Doctor Strange. It goes right through and they get a tree. So Electro's there. They're around all the wires and everything. Then at the same moment, you get Sandman pop up and he goes, "Hey, Peter, it's me." And so now we're figuring out when he says, "Peter, it's me, don't you remember?" Because at the end of Spider-Man 3, they get along, they help each other. So that's probably taken near the end of that time of that universe. And then he helps Peter go after Electro to unplug the electricity. And then we get Jamie Foxx back as Electro. Now, the only downfall and some things you're just going to have to accept in a movie is Jamie Foxx looks different. He doesn't look like the nerd from The Amazing Spider-Man with Andrew Garfield, and he's out there and he's funnier. Like, he has wittier comments. So maybe because when he came into this universe, it changed him a little bit. It's amazing what happens when it's not just Sony doing it. No offense, Sony. When they get over to the MCU and Kevin Feige and then those guys, how he got a little better, I'd say. Well, we'll get to Green Goblin in a second. And William Dafoe. He goes, "What? We're just going to pretend I'm not butt-ass naked?" And so they get him clothes and he zaps him to Doctor Strange's lair, zaps the Sandman back to the lair. And then Peter has to stay and help put things back together. And then in the trailer, we see a broken Green Goblin mask. And so we finally get to see William Dafoe. He's covering up the what he flies on and the jet thing that he flies on. And he has the mask hanging up on the dumpster, and it finally shows William Dafoe, shows his face and his split personality, the Goblin talking to him, calling him weak, they could take over. And he goes, no, and he takes a rock and slams the mask. And I think this was the MCU and Kevin Feige's way of saying, okay, that mask is old school, it's early 2000s. We are going to let William Dafoe just act this out. And what I loved is that William Dafoe, I believe at the age of 66, said he was not going to come back unless he could do his own stunts. And I'm so glad that they did that because I'll say it again, he stole the movie in Villains with this acting in this. And he wasn't going to come back just for a cameo. He wasn't going to do a Matt Murdock or anything like Daredevil. He wanted to come back in and have a role, and he did. And this was the first sign of it, saying we're just going to let William Dafoe act. So we get that moment of, okay, no more mask. And then he takes off, and then Aunt May goes, "Oh, he's here." And Peter shows up. And this is where some of you that don't know the old school Spider-Man is, you have Green Goblin and Dr. Osborn split. And so he has split personality. He has the Green Goblin in his head. Sometimes it is Osborn. At this moment, it becomes a debate of they're in there, they're talking, and Osborn is like, my business here doesn't exist. My son's not here. Like, nothing here is the same. I'm in this world. I'm in this universe. So what do I do? How do I get through? And Aunt May, tells Peter, like, you have to help. And Peter goes, no, this is not my fight. We got to send him back to their universe. And she's telling him, like, oh, it's not. What do you mean it's not up to you? Like, this is what we do, that we help people. And so she's kind of in his ear of, we've got to help them and everything else. And we all kind of know, like, you ain't helping these villains. Listen to Doctor Strange. So he gets Osborn to the lair, and then we get a reunion, when I don't think we ever saw in those movies where Octavius is like Osborn and Osborn's like Octavius. And so we're slowly figuring out where they came from in their universe. Green Goblin had to come, before obviously he died. Octavius was coming near the end of Spider-Man 2. Electro said, he was beating Spider-Man, and then they put the thing on that he was going to become pure energy. Then he came there, so it was near the end of the Amazing Spider-Man. Sandman came near the end of Spider-Man 3 because he was helping. Don't know what part of the lizard came from, but it was there. And then we get Strange back. Strange, he goes, "Oh, good, you got another one," puts him in there, and then we find out that they all die. And Peter goes, "What do you mean they all die?" Octavia said, "You died." And Sandman goes, "Yeah, it was all over the news. You were impaled by your glider, killed by Spider-Man." And then he tells him that Octavius, like, "And you too, like you drowned and you died from fighting Spider-Man." And then Electro told the lizard, like, "Yeah, you died fighting Spider-Man too." And so they find out that they all die in their universes. So when Strange comes up and puts him in, and he goes, "We're going to send him back to the universe. I figured it out." Uh, Peter's like, "Strange, like, we can't, we're going to send them to die." And Strange goes, "It's their fate. You can't change that. Like, it's their fate. It's what's supposed to happen in their universe. And when we send them to the universe, like, it's kind of like that's theirs." And so this is where when people had said, this is where Strange is acting weird. Why is he like okay with death? But you have to think, spoiler about when you watch the What If show. The What If, it was said the What If is going to come back around and it's going to mean something in the MCU. And I think this is what they were talking about, because in What If, in the Doctor Strange episode, Doctor Strange, spoiler, and the What If tried to go back in time and change an absolute. He was trying to make it where for Christine to not die, because in that universe, Christine dies. So that's what I'm curious to see in Doctor Strange 2, and we'll get to all that later on. But he tried to change where she wouldn't die, and the Ancient One has to show back up and say, "You can't change that." And it showed different ways he tried to change it. And so this is where time travel is a little weird, because in the end game, we learned, like, if they took an Infinity Stone, it's going to branch off and create this other world and everything else, this other universe. Then we learned about the TVA. So we're getting a little confusing here. But in What If, we learned you can't change an absolute. Strange is saying it's their fate. Their death for a bigger meaning in the world means very little. Like, it means more for the universe if this is what happens to them. And this is where Strange has he has this box that we've seen pictures of, has the spell contained. They're yelling for, Osborn's like, "Peter," and Strange is about to send them back to the universe. And then we get, Peter takes the box, and, then we get this fight between Spider-Man, or Peter Parker, and Doctor Strange. Kind of a fight, kind of a, catch me if you can. This is where they're wondering why is Strange acting so weird. But I think if you think back to the What If show, Strange is thinking, well, it shouldn't be our problem. We should just send them back to their universe. 2, they're villains, so something has to happen anyway. 3, he understands that things have to happen in certain timelines. Like, there's a flow of time where things have to happen for the greater universe, which he told. So at this moment, we all know as fans, like, this Peter Parker, you have no idea what these villains are capable of. Especially we're all kind of waiting for Green Goblin to show up, because we know right now it is probably Osborn. We're just waiting. We know. So this is where I got annoyed with Peter. Like, "Peter, what are you doing?" Then we get this little, catch and mouse, or cat and mouse. He's trying to run from Strange, and it's not going well. Strange has the portals bring him back. And it was kind of funny when he sent a spirit out of his body. He was trying to get the box, but it was moving. And he's like, "How is this happening?" And then we get, Peter trying to run. And so Strange is trying to catch him. So we get this, great, it's kind of a fight scene, but kind of not, but this scene with Doctor Strange versus Spider-Man. Strange is basically not trying to hurt Peter. He's just trying to get the box. Then Then we finally get a scene where, like in the original Doctor Strange, where we see the buildings moving around, looks like geometry pieces and cubes when they're in the mirror dimension, and he's learned how to move it. So when you see the flip and you get the music, kind of like we got from Doctor Strange, they're flying through the city. Then we see the train come in. The train I think is a Easter egg of it was the first or second Spider-Man movie with Tobey Maguire, I believe. And that's what Peter's like, what is this? He goes, the mirror dimension where I'm in control, and he's able to move things. And Strange is trying to scare Peter at this moment. Like, look, we're in this mirror dimension. I can do anything I want. You're not running from me. I have these portal, the cape, and all that. And Peter's like, Strange, we can save them. We don't have to send them to die. And Peter, is trying, and he's trying to tell Peter, everybody that knows Peter Parker Spider-Man's coming here. And if the spell gets broken, they're all coming here to this universe. And he goes, we got to try to save them. We got to try to fix them. He's talking about curing them. And Strange says it's their fate. You can't change that more than you can change who they are. And Peter's like, I have to try. And so they're trying to go after this box. And Peter's like, oh, look at this world. It's geometry. I'm good at geometry. And so Strange finally gets the box. Peter pulls these things back together. He ties up Strange, able to get the thing. And then he hops into the portal and just kind of leaves Strange in that mirror dimension, and the portal shuts. And then he's like, oh, no. I fought Dr. Strange and I totally won. One annoying thing I hate that they do with Benedict Cumberbatch's character in Doctor Strange, and sometimes he's really, really powerful, and sometimes he's not. And what I mean by that is, now I understand in the original Doctor Strange, he's new in the mystic arts and everything. Then you get to Infinity War. Infinity War was like split, where in the first fight scene in Infinity War, he does okay, but then he gets choked and he passes out. Then they get to, I am gonna die on this hill, when he fought Thanos, and Thanos had 4 of the Infinity Stones, I believe. Yeah, he had 4 of them. He held his own more than Tony Stark, more than all of them, more than Thor until he got the hammer. Like, he held his own against him, and he has a confidence to him. Like, I love Infinity War. When he goes, when Thanos is like, still he accomplished his mission, and Doctor Strange is like, you may regret that. He just brought you face to face with the master of the mystic arts. So he has this confidence to him. He held his own. And, maybe he didn't fight fully because he knew what was going to happen, and he knew the way it was going to have to work out. I don't know. I am going to die on the hill saying that if Doctor Strange went against Thanos without any Infinity Stones, Doctor Strange would win. That's just me. And so I hate how they make him sometimes powerful like that. And then sometimes they don't. And then like in Infinity War or Endgame, pretty powerful. You see him like pick these guys up and slam them. He's able to control this dam breaking of the water. Like, so he's pretty powerful. So, but I think he was pulling punches. I think he was just trying to scare Peter. He didn't want to hurt him. He was just trying to get the box. But so Peter has this moral compass in his head, pretty much tells these villains, I think they respect Peter. They said, you could have left us here to die. Why didn't you? And he says, I think I can help you. I think I can get you back to being good guys. It seemed like something happened to you guys where you guys were good guys and now you're not, which is kind of true. And then basically says, like, if you're not coming with me, basically saying, if you don't come with me to help you, then you're going back to your universe. And if you go back to your universe, you're going to die. So it's like, join you or die. So Peter's in quite the pickle, sends MJ and Ned away. And then during this whole scene, though, you're going to have to watch. Jamie Foxx is just killing it with these one-liners. Absolutely funny. Up to this point, William Dafoe is acting great. And then when he's talking about fixing people, we get the famous quote from William Dafoe. I'm something of a scientist myself. And the crowd, clapped. They didn't cheer, but they clapped. So Peter brings everybody back to Happy's place. Shows this box, and it looks like a workstation that Tony Stark would have had. It was basically they could create anything out of it. So if you're doing a science experiment, you could create anything. So there's a reason why Happy saved that. He saved that probably because it's one of Tony's prized possessions, and all that stuff. And so he's going to work, and so he's just trying to change people. And for me, I'm annoyed because at this moment, like I said, this is a great movie. People are giving it 9.5, a 9 out of 10, 9.5 out of 10, 9.8 out of 10. Some are giving it 97%. I agree with that. That little 3% or 2% is this, like, Peter, what are you doing? Quit being an idiot. We know these villains, what's about to happen, kind of. First one he fixes Octavius, which I love. This part I did like. Changed to where the tentacles are kind of controlling him and in his head, and he's able to get a chip to where they don't hear him in the head, and you see like those voices, they're gone. Great. So we see him turn to Peter and say, I'm grateful. How can I help you? So then they start working on other things. They give Electro this thing that controls all the electricity to try to get it out of him. Then, so he's doing good things. And Osborn is helping him. He's looking at Peter saying, this is amazing. The technology here in this universe is great. And if you ever want a job and you want to come over to my universe, I'll hire you. So it was just great interaction. But in the back of everybody's mind is, when is Green Goblin going to turn its ugly head over? And Octavius says something to Osborn saying, how's it feel, Norman, to be whole again? And then he gives that little side eye, and that's where it's back. Like, he's here. Like, from Poltergeist, they're here. That's what was happening. And then this part, the spider sense from Peter, he's walking around the apartment looking around, the sensors are going off. And I'm sitting there thinking, he's here, he's back. And he turns the spider web to Osborn, and then he goes, then the acting of William Dafoe to bring back Green Goblin and the facial expressions where he doesn't need the mask just knocks it out of the park. He deserves an award for this, just being that. And that's where he was like, I can't remember every phrase, but he's like, Norman's not here, honey. And, like, the way he talks is just fantastic to bring Green Goblin back. And that's where he was like, we don't need to be fixed. God's take, and convinces everybody in that room to go after Peter. Aunt May runs with the technology, and then we get this fight scene. And this fight scene is brutal. Lizard escapes and is causing havoc. Sandman escapes, Electro escapes. He takes the reactor that from like Tony Stark's suit that was powering this thing, takes it. So now he's gonna become more powerful. Then you get this big fight scene with William Dafoe and Tom Holland. And William Dafoe said he was not coming back to this movie if he could not do the fight scene. And this fight scene in the hotel was just brutal. Punches after punches, blow after blow, knocking down the floor after floor, moving down the hotel where the condos and everything. And William Dafoe, basically telling Peter, this Spider-Man in this world, same thing as Tobey Maguire's when he was in there, pretty much tell him like, you're too weak and everything else, and you've got to take it, and and everything else. And then we get, I said the spoiler free one, it's gonna pull at your heartstrings, and this will pull at your heartstrings. They get down to the very bottom. Aunt May's there. Osborn is on top of Spider-Man, saying, he's trying to kill him, and Aunt May stabs the quote-unquote cure that was supposed to cure Osborn. He goes, didn't work, and grabs Peter and says, I'm going to help you. And then you see the jet glider coming, and Aunt May standing there, and it just crashes into Aunt May. And then he gets on the jet thing, and he goes, Peter, and he goes, pretty much saying I was going to help him. He goes, and you'll thank me later. Throws a the bomb at Aunt May. Peter, gets in front of it, and this is where Marvel, pulled one out from under us. Aunt May gets back up. Peter's like, "Are you okay?" And she goes, "Yeah, I just got knocked down. It hurt, but I'm knocked down." And Peter, says like, "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have helped them." And she goes, "You're sorry?" And says like, "No, you're doing the right thing." And he goes, "I should have listened to Strange." And I'm sitting there going, "Yeah, you should have, you dumbass. Like, don't listen to her." But then I felt bad after this part. And then she gives us the line that we have not gotten in the Spider-Man world. With great power comes great responsibility. And like she says, you have a gift. You have a gift for helping people. And says, with great power comes great responsibility. And the theater clap that knows where that came from. But then she's like, I just gotta catch my breath, and she lays down. And this was almost as sad as Tony. Not quite, but this was pretty sad. Peter sees blood on her, and she goes, I have to catch my breath. And then we get Aunt May's death. And other ones, some people thought maybe the Tony Stark would have been like the Uncle Ben death for this Peter in this MCU world. We get the Aunt May death. And this is the point where I said Tom Holland acts pretty good, but this is where we see Tom Holland like we've never seen him before. Police show up. They even shoot him. And just the look on Tom Holland's face of how pissed off that he made Peter Parker look. Tom Holland just acted his ass off. And so it shows a little bit of Peter's dark side. And then we get, the report, after that of people going after. We get Jonah Jameson back on there saying, like, wherever Spider-Man goes, havoc ensues and everything else. And this is foreshadowing something that we'll get to near the end that I didn't see coming. I told you this movie's going to go the way you thought it did, and it's not going to go the way you thought it was going to go. From the trailer, we've already seen that. Then, poor Peter just losing Aunt May, had this brutal fight scene with Green Goblin. All the villains are gone from this other world. Doctor Strange is in a different world that's going to help you, because think about it. When he goes, I need some help, and he's with Ed and MJ, who's going to help? He has Doctor Strange, and that's it. Thor's gone. Guardians of the Galaxy are gone. I guess you could go to Hulk and Banner, but he doesn't know anything about Shang-Chi. Didn't really know Wanda, so that's not something he could just go get to help him. And so at this point in time, after that happened, he's gone. Doctor Strange is locked away. Then here it comes. So we get Ned and MJ, they see it on the news. They're waiting to try to find Peter. And now they have Strange's finger medallion. Can we talk about that for a second? Why does Doctor Strange need that to make a portal? That was one of the things, and it's probably from the comic, but that's one thing from the original Doctor Strange movie that I did not understand. To try to make the thing. So Ned needs it, and then Ned was wearing it, messing around with it, and he goes, I wish we could just see Peter one more time. You see this flare. And so he tries to do what Doctor Strange does, and goes, I wish we could see Peter Parker. Then you see a Spider-Man jump through, and they're like, oh my God, who is that? Who is that? And then he takes the hat off, and we get Andrew Garfield come in. And so rumors were true. Andrew Garfield was in this movie from his Amazing Spider-Mans. So Ned indeed can use magic. We don't know why. Then we get Andrew Garfield come in, and they're freaking out. He goes, I'm Peter Parker. I came into this world, and I've been trying to find, you're Peter Parker ever since. I know there's villains out here. Then we get the great thing of prove it. Jumps on the wall and she's throwing bread. Why'd you do that? Well, don't you have a spider sense? He goes, yeah, but not for bread. So this whole sequence from that point up until the end was just back and forth. And so Ned does it again. He goes, find Peter Parker. And then Tobey Maguire comes through. And so we get all the Spider-Mans. It's fantastic to see Tobey Maguire walk through. And he goes, I've been trying to find your friend. And then he sees Andrew Garfield, and they shoots webs at each other. And, it's pretty cool. And so they're trying to figure out where Peter is, or Tom Holland's Peter Parker is. And, they figure out what's really cool is the parallels to these universes. So one, it was just great to see Tobey Maguire back. It was great to see Andrew Garfield back. His movies haven't been gone for a couple of years. We haven't seen Tobey Maguire in Spider-Man since before 2010. So it's been a while. So the whole sequence between MJ, Ned, and the two Peters were just fantastic. But the parallels, where Tobey Maguire's, is is there a place where he goes to just get away from everything? And that's when Andrew Garfield goes, he goes, Empire State Building or Chrysler Building and everything else. So just the parallels, and then MJ's like, yeah, he does have a place like that. And so just the parallels between them is great. Like, oh, they all are different, but they're the same. They find Peter, and this is where you see kind of Peter's dark side starting to come out. And again, I think this is foreshadowing something in the future. And then he sees the two Spider-Mans. And so now we have Andrew Garfield, Tobey Maguire, and Tom Holland, the three biggest Spider-Mans on the same screen together. And then Peter's trying to tell them, like, don't act like you know what I'm going through, because they're saying they're sorry about Aunt May. And he goes, don't act like you know what I'm going through. And he said that Peter's done. He's like, I'm done. I'm going to send them back to universe. And if you guys kill them, that's on you. And what I'm glad about is Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield come back, and it's not a cameo, kind of like William Dafoe. They came back and they have a role, then, and it was closure for some of the unfinished business from those movies too. Because Andrew Garfield, tells him, like, I lost Quinn, who was his MJ, and said, like, she was falling, he couldn't save her, she died, and it bothered him. He went on to be Spider-Man for a while, but he got bitter. He wasn't blowing his punches anymore. He got pretty dark, doesn't want him to see. So we're getting a older Andrew Garfield Spider-Man. And then we're also getting an older Tobey Maguire Spider-Man, where he said, I hunted down the guy I thought killed Uncle Ben. He got what he wanted, but it didn't make him feel better. It's not going to make him feel better. It's not going to work what you're about to do, because he was talking about, because then Tom Holland's like, I want to kill him. I want to rip him apart. And so they're trying to stop him. And they're, going back and forth. And then, Tom Holland's like, with great power, and Tobey Maguire's like, comes great responsibility. So you got this parallel, and then, like, she didn't die for nothing, Peter. And then we finally get, the picture of the Spider-Mans, the cartoon, pointing at each other. We'll get that scene. All three Peters are going to work on a cure. So now they're all working on a cure. And we're all sitting there, I'm rolling my eyes like, please, you're not going to change them. But they start working on cures. And then we get, like, Ned looking at Tobey Maguire like, so do you have a best friend? He goes, I did. He died in my arms after he tried to kill me. And so Ned is, like, freaking out. So then we start to figure out, we figured out where Andrew Garfield Spider-Man and his universe came from. And then they start talking, and Tobey Maguire was like, yeah, I have somebody, and we worked it out, with MJ. So we're getting an older Tobey Maguire Spider-Man as well. And then Ned goes, Peter, and they're like, yes. Oh, did you mean? He goes, Peter Parker. He goes, yeah, we're both all Peter Parker. So we're getting the scene of, like, which one? They get everything. The cures are made. And then also Tobey Maguire's like, I want to take care of Dr. Osborn. I've been thinking about this cure a lot. Looked at Tom Holland, and said, we have to cure them all, Peter, because he wants them dead. Sorry, he wants them dead. Can't blame him. So then a famous line again with Ned goes, and Peter, I promise I won't become an evil supervillain and try to kill you, which foreshadowing. So it's just great that we have Andrew Garfield, Tobey Maguire all together. And then Peter, puts out a video to all the villains. They're on the Statue of Liberty, and we see with the Statue of Liberty, they're changing it. And it has Captain America's shield on it, which I thought was fantastic. That's a little cameo there. So we've got a little bit of references to Iron Man and Captain America in this one, which is great, because we're probably not going to see those characters again. At least we'll never see Iron Man again, but we may never see Captain America. We might see him at some point. So the interaction on the Empire State Building was great. I believe there was a thing where Tobey Maguire almost didn't have Spider-Man 2 because he was messing around saying, oh, my back. So he stretched on, oh, my back. Andrew Garfield has to pop his back, and he's like, that's great. And then, then the interaction with the web shooters, because Tobey Maguire's comes out of his body, and Andrew Garfield and Tom Holland's like, we have to create it. And Andrew Garfield is just like, what? You can make that? Wow. And then they're talking about, does it come out of other places in your body? So the interaction between Tom Holland, Tobey Maguire, and Andrew Garfield, I think it was scripted, but it was also, like, improvised. I think this is how they probably talk to each other in real life. And then Andrew Garfield's like, we know those are probably the worst Spider-Man movies. I didn't mind them, but they might be the worst out of all of them, rating wise. And he said, man, I'm so lame. I had to fight a rhino and, a lizard. And, because he got the different villains, Tom Holland's character, he got different villains, but he's also in the MCU, which is different than what Sony, just pure Sony, and in corporation with a little bit of Marvel, what they had to deal with. And then like Tobey Maguire had Green Goblin and all that. So Toby's like, well, hold on, can we go back to this thing saying you're lame? No, you're amazing. Like, no, you're amazing. And so he's like, thank you. I need to hear that, but thank you. No, I want to hear you say it. No, I get it. Thank you. So it was just great to hear, like, hey, you did a good job as playing Spider-Man. And after this performance for Andrew Garfield, we needed him as Spider-Man again. I think he's a better actor now than he was back then, and he was good in the Spider-Mans, in the Amazing Spider-Mans. Then we finally get the showdown, I love how they're not cameos or a big part of it. The Captain Shield thing is amazing. That, collaboration with all three of them on there was fantastic. And then we get the villain showing up. Electro shows up. Give me the box, Peter, because that's what they want. They know that if that box is around, they can't stay in that universe. It will send them back and they'll die because it's their fate. And so they just want the box. And Electro shows up. We get the conversation between Electro and Andrew Garfield's Peter Parker. And it's really cool. You're seeing them swing around, but they're getting their ass kicked. And so one other cool collaboration was, all of them are like, I thought you were Peter 1. I thought I was Peter 2. No, you're Peter 3. And then Tom Holland's character was like, okay, I don't know how to work together, because they're like, we've never worked together. And Tom Holland's like, okay, I didn't want to say anything before, but I was on the Avengers. And Tobey Maguire's like, the Avengers, that's great. What is that? Because in this universe, there is no Avengers. Now we know of, there is no other superheroes. There is no other this. And even Andrew Garfield, he's like, is that a band? Are you in a band? Hilarious. I started laughing. So they work together, and to see them swinging off each other's webs. Then we get the scene in the trailer where it shows Tom Holland's character jump in front of Sandman, Electro, and the Lizard. And you see like the Lizard's head get hit. So you think they blurred out the other Spider-Mans. They did. They blurred them out. Again, Marvel doing that to us. Was great. They start fighting, and then the cure start working. So, they cured the Lizard, they cured Sandman. And then we see Doc Ock come back and show that he's like a villain again, and then helps them get the reactor off of Electro, and they're able to cure him. But during this whole fight scene, Ned can't close the one on the portal, so the Lizard chase after him, and then he opens up another one. And then MJ and Ned, because they're protecting the box. And so they're trying to figure all that out. And so when Ned tries to open it up, we get Doctor Strange back. So we got him just enough. I like to see more because I'm a Benedict Cumberbatch guy, but Strange is back. And it's funny, he comes out, he goes, where is he? I was dangling over the Grand Canyon for 12 hours. Gets the box back and then the ring back, and he goes, they're like, but sir, it's working. He goes, what's working? He sees it, and he's like, well, I'll be damned. Then I love when he looks at Ned and he goes, did you just open a portal? And he goes, yeah. And he goes, So now he's on Doctor Strange's radar, but he's back. They're curing people. They've got all the villains cured except for Goblin. He has not shown up yet. But Strange is back. He sees all the Spider-Mans, and he's like, what just happened? And, Tom Holland's like, no, we're doing it. And Strange is like, I'm glad you're doing it, but they still have to get sent back. This is done. Then we get Green Goblin back, throwing the bombs. They have the mini fight scene with him. He takes the box. They're able to get the box back. And when he had put a bomb in it, it explodes, and now the spell is loose. And when the bomb goes off, MJ falls, and we get this parallel from all the other movies. MJ fell in the other Tobey Maguire world, and Quinn fell in the Amazing Spider-Man. So we get this parallel that we've seen in the trailer where MJ falls. Tom Holland goes together, can't get him. Then so everybody in the theater is like, oh my God, it's going to happen again. Andrew Garfield jumps up, able to save her. And again, this is wrapping up parts of their movies as well that wasn't wrapped up. Him saving MJ was amazing because she doesn't die, but it was heartbreaking. It was, are you okay? Parallels to what happened with him, and he needed that. I think he needed. It hurts that he didn't save, in his world, but this does help. But the spell is loose. Strange is trying to contain it, and then it just goes off. And the split that you see in the universe, again, it goes back to Loki. It looks exactly the same. The purple, the cracks in the sky were the same ones we saw in the Loki season finale. So now the multiverse is open, and Strange is trying to close them, but it's open. Like the multiverse is here, and as it's opening, you're seeing figures. I think you see the Rhino one. You're seeing different Spider-Man villains, some that we've seen before, some that are from the comics that were popping through. If you watch the movie for the second time or the third time, you'll see the outlines of them trying to come through. And then we get the showdown, and this is where, again, Tom Holland just acts amazing. We get Green Goblin again, Osborn versus Spider-Man, and he's poking at Spider-Man, or Tom Holland's character, like, oh, Peter, you're too weak to send me back to die. And Peter's like, I just wanted to kill you myself. And just the look on his face that Tom Holland's able to do just looks scary. And he's like, that a boy. And they get this brutal fight scene, and you could tell he's fighting Green Goblin to kill him. The way he's punching him, he's going to kill him. And then we almost get another parallel, because in Tobey Maguire's world, Green Goblin gets, stabbed with his glider. Peter picks up the glider to go after him, and Tobey Maguire steps in front and stops him. Now, during this time, Green Goblin has a knife. So as this happening, I think I literally was sitting there and I said this. I was like, he's going to get stabbed. And we see him stab Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man and falls. Then they're able to cure Green Goblin. And William Dafoe's acting is just amazing. The way he's able to change his facial expressions and change on a dime of who he is. He was like, Peter, what have I done? So it just completely changed. His acting was amazing. So they save Green Goblin. Tobey Maguire's fine. He goes, I've been stabbed before. And so we get all three Spider-Mans up. But then they look up and they see the multiverse is cracking. Strange is struggling. So Tom Holland has to go up and talk to Strange. And Strange is like, they're starting to come through and I can't stop them. Like, he can't stop this multiverse happening. And Peter, Tom Holland's character, says, well, but what if you cast the spell? Like, what if we actually cast the spell? And he goes, what do you mean? And he goes, but what if we change the spell? At the beginning of the movie, the spell was, forget Peter Parker as Spider-Man. And then, he's like looking at Strange and going, they're only coming here because they know Peter Parker is Spider-Man. They know Peter Parker is. And he said, yeah. And he goes, but what if people forgot me? What if they forgot Peter? And so people throughout, said that Strange is acting weird. This is where you can tell this is actually Strange, in my opinion. And Strange goes, no, people that love you will forget you. And he's talking about himself too. He's like, we will forget. And it was a sad thing, he's like, we will forget who you are. And he was like, but would it work? He goes, yeah, it would work. But you have to understand, people who love you, like we would all forget who you are, Peter. And so when he calls him Peter, you're like, okay, you're back on that side. And Peter goes, do it. I have to make the sacrifice to save the universe. And he goes, thank you, sir. And he goes, call me Steven. And so that's where and he was like, nice knowing you, kid, or, so long, kid. And so Peter has to go say his goodbyes. He goes to the two Spider-Mans, Andrew and Tobey, and they get this big old hug. And then you get one final laugh. He looks at Tobey Maguire and goes, oh, you're in so much pain, aren't you? He goes, so much pain. Doctor Strange cares about Peter, but he has to cast a spell. And then we get the sad scene, pulls at your heartstrings. Peter has to say goodbye to MJ and Ned. And what's sad is the first spell was just forget he's Spider-Man. They would know who Peter is. So Ned and Peter being best friends, they would have their memories of being kids and being high school friends. So it's just sad that he has to say goodbye to that. He and MJ become a couple, and then we finally get the kiss scene or whatever. And he goes, I'll come find you. I'll explain everything. And she goes, you better. I'll just figure it out. And so then we get the ultimate sacrifice from Peter, and Peter has to say goodbye. Strange casts a spell where people are going to forget Peter Parker at all. They'll know Spider-Man, but they are going to forget who Peter Parker is. The villains go back to their universe. So it's just the music with it and everything is just completely and utterly sad. Then we fast forward to where it's snowing. Peter goes to the coffee shop where MJ works. He has this little speech prepared. Then Ned walks in and they look at Peter. They don't know. They're like, or she's like, how can I help you? And he goes, I'm Peter Parker. I want a coffee. When Ned had walked in, he had an MIT thing on, and MJ goes, oh, fellow engineer. So it showed that they both got into MIT. So not knowing Peter got them to MIT, which is what Peter was trying to do all along, was trying to help them. And MJ had the scratch. And this is where it becomes even more sad is Peter sees that and says, are you okay? And she goes, oh yeah, whatever that was doesn't hurt anymore. And she goes, is there anything else? And Peter puts away the note and goes, nope. And I think because Peter knows, because what was foreshadowed was, who knows Peter Parker and Spider-Man, bad things happen. So he sees that and goes, I can't put them in danger again. If they're able to figure out who I am, we're friends again, we're together again, they are going to be hurt at some point. So Peter made the ultimate sacrifice for people to forget who he was, makes the ultimate sacrifice to not try to get Ned and MJ to remember who he is. So he made one of the ultimate hero moves and sacrifices for them in this movie. So it was just a great movie. And then we get, and this is where the spell shows that it works. They don't know who he is. Shows him in Aunt May's grave. And Happy walks up and, how'd you know her? So he doesn't even know who Peter is. And Peter has said, I knew him through Spider-Man. And he goes, me too. So they know there's a Spider-Man. They just don't know Peter Parker is. They don't know he's Spider-Man. So it's kind of like a goodbye thing to Happy. We'll probably see him again. But another thing with that, then we get another sad moment where Peter has to get an apartment on his own. You see a book for the GED test. So he's not going to school. This does end Peter Parker's high school trilogy. Then we see him make a new Spider-Man suit. And it's like the original, the bright blue, the regular red, not the dark red, just looks like a classic Spider-Man swinging through New York in the snow. He's got the police radar, kind of like in the first one, they're listening to the police radar to listen for Uncle Ben's killer. So just stuff to give, honor to the other Spider-Mans swinging through New York City with the snow. And then that's where the movie ends. So this was a fantastic movie. There are 2 credit scenes. I'll try to talk about both at some point. The first one was at the end of Venom, Let There Be Carnage at the end. It showed that they showed up in this universe. So that end credit scene shows when the spell got botched, shows Venom, then he disappears, but a little drop of Venom was left behind. And then the second one was the Doctor Strange 2 trailer, which at the time I recorded this, the Doctor Strange trailer has been put on the internet. So people that have not seen the movie can see it now. So we got the Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness trailer. Looks that movie might end up being better than this Spider-Man movie. Yes, I said it. Don't at me. It will probably be better than the Spider-Man movie, but that's my breakdown of this movie. There will be another one where I talk about some things that we probably need to be talked about from this movie, but fantastic movie. Hope everybody enjoyed it. If you're able to see it or not. If you haven't seen it and you listen to this and you're like, I gotta go see it, you gotta go see it. But thank you guys so much for listening to this podcast. There's going to be other Marvel ones. Logan and I will come back and do a Geek Corner. I just have to get some of this on my chest and talk about it. I'll talk about other things from this movie. That are there consequences to some of this? Are we going to see some of this? I will do a breakdown of the Doctor Strange 2 trailer and discuss what is possible with that. But we got to be careful with Marvel and their stuff. But go check out the Doctor Strange 2 trailer. It looks fantastic. Again, it might be better than this Spider-Man movie. But okay, thank you guys so much for listening. This has been another episode of the Coach Steve Show. And until next time, I will see you later. Thank you guys so much for listening.